Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 90 of the Horror Guys. I'm Kevin,
And I'm Brian.
and we're here to talk about some horror movies.
We are.
We saw some this week.
What do we see?
We saw the classic Tarantula creature feature from 1958, and the less classic Fear in the Night from 1972.
And the even less classic.
The Omen remake from 2006, and possibly a future classic, The Belko Experiment, 2016. It's too new to call it a classic.
Well, if there was any one of these four that I would like to see again,
It'd be
it's
The
gonna
Belko Experiment.
Yeah.
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 So anyway, here we go.
Yeah.
Starting with the oldest best.
Always start with the oldie first.
The oldest first, I mean. Tarantula, 1958. This is when we started to be a
Is it 58? I got 55.
scratch. Did I say? I bet I've been saying 1958. Yeah, it's 1955.
It is 55. Okay.
I think the other screen might have said 58,
It might have.
and I was just reading it. It's your fault.
Hey, who writes this stuff?
Who writes this
Yes,
stuff?
it is 1955.
Should we just redo over
No.
from the beginning?
No.
Okay. You got
Directed by Jack Arnold. Written by Robert N. Fresco and Martin Berkeley. Stars John Agar, Mara Corday, and Leo G. Carroll. Hour and 20.
1955.
Still 1955, yes.
Yes, not 1958.
65 years ago.
So this is kind of a new era of horror movies where we started to fear the atomic age was, atomic things were scary and science was scary. And, it was getting away from the classic monsters and more of, giant creatures and aliens and things like that.
Yeah, as it mentions in my book, the HorrorGuys.com Guides to Universal Studios Shock Theater, the old classic monster movies, the Wolfman and Frankenstein and Dracula, the supernatural monsters, started to go out of style a little bit in the late 40s. World War II was over, the atomic bomb had been dropped, nuclear power, and people were starting to understand what radiation was.
And genetics and
genetics.
New sciences were coming to the field. And
Atomic
Yeah.
age monsters were taken over.
yeah, science
And-
gone amok.
Yeah, we won't be talking too much more about old Dracula and Frankenstein anymore. We're past them with Universal. But now Universal's into their giant bug and alien phase, which is different, but still good.
Yeah, this was one of the better ones, I thought.
And this is one of their, this is the first giant bug movie.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, this is where this starts.
The effects were pretty darn good.
Did you like it?
I did. Yeah,
right.
I was entertained. Yes,
Yeah,
kind of silly. The science is bad, but yeah,
well, yeah.
it was entertaining. Yeah,
It was all explained well.
yeah, it was.
We open on a panoramic shot of the desert. A man staggers toward the camera and collapses. From his outfit, we see that he's wearing pajamas, and he's either disfigured or mutated horribly. Credits roll. Well, Dr. Hastings lands his plane and announces that he's just delivered twins. Not only is he a doctor, not only is he good looking, but he's a pilot.
He's got it all.
Yeah, he's Mr. Hero of the movie.
He is.
He had Mr. Perfect. He heads into town to the hotel where he has his office. The sheriff calls as there's been an emergency. Hastings looks at the body that the sheriff found, and they think maybe it's Dr. Jacobs, a scientist who worked for Professor Deemer as a nutrient biologist.
But he's messed up.
Yeah, he is.
Science gone bad.
Deemer identifies the body, which is a real mess. Deemer explains it as acromegalia, a disease which causes deformity.
Acromegaly?
That's not what he says.
He pronounces it differently, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, today we call it acromegaly. It's the same thing Rondo Hatton had and the Elephant Man and people like that.
Well, this guy had a extreme and sudden case of it, which doesn't really happen. It takes a long time to set in.
Many years.
Yeah.
But he got it in a week.
Yeah, so something's definitely wrong here. Science gone mad.
Jacobs was fine just 4 days ago, and it progressed very rapidly. Hastings doesn't believe the story since that disease takes years to progress to that stage.
And this was even beyond that stage. It was pretty horrific.
We cut to Deemer working in his lab. He loads up a syringe and injects it into a rat. We see several giant rats and guinea pigs in the cages behind him.
And that was a neat effect.
That was a really good effect.
Yeah, it
you
looked
couldn't
really
tell
realistic.
anything was fake there. That they didn't have computers at the time. It was all done through camera and film tricks, but it looked very real.
Yeah, it did.
We also see a tarantula in a cage that's at least 5 feet long. As Deemer gets ready to inject a monkey, another deformed man comes into the lab and tears the place up. He injects Deemer with the serum, but in the fight, the tarantula gets out of its cage and escapes. A fire starts, and Deemer's lab is completely destroyed. The mutant man dies, and Deemer then buries him in the desert. Dun, dun,
The
dun.
story so far.
Yeah. Stephanie Clayton comes to town, and Hastings drives her out to Deemer's place. She's here as a student scientist, or as they're called today, interns.
Intern.
Yeah.
Here to learn for no pay. For the experience.
Young, pretty girl student working for this old man out in the desert. I'm sure she's working for the cause, right?
Yes.
That's why he wants her. Mm-hmm. Well, we see the giant tarantula, and it's more like 12 feet across now.
Growing big. Growing fast.
Deemer opens up and explains what he's been up to. He's using a radioactive isotope with nutrients to end world hunger. Deemer's not a mad scientist, nor does he hide or lie about anything. He honestly thinks the tarantula burned up in the fire with the other lab animals.
It didn't. Spoiler.
Yeah, believe it or not, the mad scientist is not that mad.
No, he's
just a little sloppy.
His intentions are benign, but yeah, he's kind of sloppy in his work. Contaminating, his assistants, the people working with him. And
they took it willingly.
tarantula.
They chose to take the drug.
Well, yeah, but the effect it had on him. So, yeah. Bad science.
Yeah.
Bad scientist. Bad. No donut.
Never be the one to test a new injection.
Yeah, generally.
Hastings does an autopsy on Jacobs, and it really is acromegaly, but he can't explain the speed of the disease. We can see that Deemer is starting to show symptoms as well now.
And that was good makeup on.
Oh, yeah, he's really
Yeah.
cool looking.
Uh-huh,
He's a
yeah.
mess.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it looks real, but it looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. On her day off, Stephanie and Hastings go out on a date into the desert. They narrowly miss getting squashed by falling rocks, but then they don't hang around long enough to see the giant tarantula climbing up the other side of the mountain. He's the one shaking the rocks loose. And he's big now.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff calls Hastings again, and now farm animals in the area are being stripped down to the bone. We see the tarantula, big as a house, stalking the horses in their corral. The farmer sees it, takes a shot, and is killed by the spider. There's some wet stuff left behind, and Hastings says it's some kind of insect venom.
But in a quantity that would be impossible.
Yeah, there's no bug
This
can make
can't
that much
be-
venom.
Can't be real. Yeah.
Well, Stephanie calls, and Deemer is looking horrible. She screams, and Hastings rushes out to help. Deemer explains that Jacobs and Paul started experimenting on themselves with the nutrient, and acromegaly was the side effect. Deemer brags about his giant rat, guinea pig, and tarantula. Hastings immediately picks up on the tarantula connection. He sees an expert on tarantulas who explains all about the spider's abilities and features. Because I guess people, maybe in the 50s, they didn't know so much about tarantulas.
Probably not as much.
Not a lot of, documentaries on TV talking about these things back then. They couldn't look it up on the internet.
And the science there sort of kind of makes sense. The reason the humans got acromegaly was the same reason the real acromegaly, because your bones and everything are all set and fused where they can't get bigger once you're an adult. But things like your jaw and your hands and parts of you can keep growing, and that's what acromegaly. Malforms your face, your jaw gets huge and stuff. And
Some parts grow, some parts don't.
The rats and guinea pigs and stuff, they had been injecting since they had been born. So they grew up that way. And the tarantula has an exoskeleton, which can get as, theoretically as big as possible.
They explained all that in the movie?
Yeah. And the
Missed
science
that part.
and the science sort of makes sense, except tarantulas can't. Spiders can't physically get that big. Wouldn't work.
Well, but if they can, though.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, that's what they want us to think. Yeah.
Okay, so all the phone lines suddenly stop working in town. The spider has knocked out the phone cables. He's that big. The spider attacks Deemer's house, and Stephanie runs out the front door when it tears open the roof to get to Deemer. She drives off with Hastings towards town, and the spider follows. The police set up submachine guns, but that doesn't work. They call in the army with dynamite, napalm, and everything they've got. Can they keep the monster out of town? They mine the road with dynamite, but that doesn't help. The Air Force comes in and they shoot it with missiles. Finally, it catches fire from the napalm and missiles, and it stops just out of town. Has mankind learned its lesson?
Sure they have.
Yeah, we'll never see another giant bug. Well, the effects for the giant lab animals in Deemer's lab are excellent. They look real to me. Most of the giant spider effects are well done also, but the spider itself is darker than everything else in the film, which does take away from the aesthetic a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit. They did use a real tarantula.
Yeah, it's definitely real.
They were. I read in the trivia somewhere that they made it behave with little puffs of air. Yeah, to make it walk the direction they wanted to.
Yeah, many of the spider shots are just sort of a big black blur on the screen, so that is definitely a weakness.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, the spider itself's not as good as it could have been. There's really no mystery here. We see everything that's going on, and it's kind of suspenseful since it keeps getting bigger and bigger and the deaths start stacking up. And at what point will it become too big to stop?
Oh, and Clint Eastwood makes a small uncredited appearance as a pilot at the end.
Yep, he's the one who actually ends up killing the spider.
Oh, you mentioned that in your notes coming up.
You got it.
I jumped the gun on that. Yeah.
So yeah, it was good. It's old, it's black and white, and the special effects are kind of limited, but yeah,
Entertaining.
it's good.
Yeah, fun entertainment.
First of its kind, it was very successful and very popular.
And they made more giant.
Oh, lots more.
Giant monsters and so forth. Yeah.
Just starting a new genre, almost.
Yeah.
All right, and then we head over to Hammerland, and we got Fear in the Night from 1972.
Bunch of crazy people in this one.
Directed by Jimmy Stangster, written by him and also Michael Sison. Stars Judy Geeson, Joan Collins, and Ralph Bates. Hour and 34 minutes. Link in the show notes if you want to pick up your copy.
Did you like it?
And let me skip down to the end and see, remind myself what this one was about.
Yeah, I remember what it was about. It was okay. I thought it was adequate.
Oh yeah, this one. Not terribly memorable.
Yeah, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
When you got to check the notes to refresh your memory on what it was about and what happened.
What was this one about?
Crazy.
It's the school.
Yeah. Low key and crazy people, and yeah.
Yeah, it could have been a good movie of the week kind of thing. It feels like a movie of the week TV movie.
Because they could get away with it being tame.
Really?
It kind of was. Yeah. And low budget, and yeah. Low on special effects.
Christopher Lee does not start eating people in this one.
Nope.
It's because he's not in it.
Yeah. If he was, he would.
But it's got Ralph Bates and it's got Peter Cushing, so yeah, it's and Joan Collins.
Yeah, the acting was fine. And,
no idea who Judy Geeson is, but okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
Credits roll as children sing. When the singing stops, we see a man hanging from a tree on the school grounds. Peggy has recently married one of the teachers at the school, and she's eager to move in with him in their cottage on the school grounds. We see that someone is in the apartment with her. She's assaulted, but in the struggle, she pulls off the attacker's prosthetic arm. Well, okay, that shouldn't be too hard to narrow it down.
And that does limit your list of suspects.
Yeah.
You'd think.
Yeah, well, I've seen The Fugitive. I know how it works. She survives, but all she remembers about the man is that he only has the one arm.
Yeah, he apparently ran and took the arm with him. It's not still there when she wakes up. That would be some strong evidence, As it is,
it's like Cinderella.
as it is, nobody
arm.
believes her.
Yeah, no, he left and took his arm with him.
Yeah.
So the doctor and the landlady think she imagined it, as she has recently had a nervous breakdown just 6 months ago. She soon leaves to be with her husband at the school. Her husband, Robert, really doesn't much like teaching, and he's very jealous of Carmichael, the wealthy headmaster, who owns the entire school. Peggy is still upset about the attack, But he reminds her that they're many miles away from London and she's perfectly safe here, isolated out in the countryside.
Yes, what could go wrong?
Whatever goes wrong in the British countryside, it's always safe. She thinks she sees someone outside the house, but he says it's probably just someone from the school out there. He doesn't take her seriously either. The next day, she explores the empty school. She hears boys chanting, but when she opens the door, no one is around.
The school is strangely empty.
Yeah, but she hears the students.
She hears stuff, and then she meets, as you say here next, Carmichael, the schoolmaster.
Yep, and he shows her around the school and points out that he has a special interest in tying knots.
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing, yes. Yeah, he's got these displays of ropes on the wall that he's tied in, all the different types of knots. And when he asks her to remove her scarf, we notice that he has a prosthetic arm. How do you tie all those knots when you've got... What did he have on the end of the arm? One of those little clip things?
Yeah.
The 2 metal finger deal?
Yeah, I think so.
That would be really hard to tie a knot with that.
An extra challenge, yeah.
Yeah. She returns to her cottage and is once again attacked by the mysterious one-armed man.
Or is it a different one-armed man?
Or is it really a one-armed man?
Is it all in her head? We don't know at this point.
Robert returns home and he doesn't believe she was really attacked. He also thinks it's all in her mind.
That's the trouble. There's no physical evidence.
Yeah.
Both times.
No footprints, no breaking and entering, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, she's out for a walk and meets Molly Carmichael, who isn't very nice. Robert keeps getting sent to London during the days for various errands, leaving Peggy home alone. This time, she's got a shotgun and feels ready for what's coming. She finds Mr. Carmichael in her living room and shoots him.
And it doesn't slow him down.
No, she sees him following her anyway, and then she hears the voices of hundreds of children in the empty school. He catches up to her in the school, and she shoots him in the face. He still keeps on coming.
And at this point, you still don't know. Is she crazy? Is she imagining this? Is he some kind of supernatural being? I thought it was kind of interesting how you don't quite know what's going on yet.
Yeah. You can kind of see that it's Peter Cushing, Carmichael, doing something bad, but is it
really him, or is it just in her head?
Yeah.
Because she blasts him with a shotgun, and he doesn't stop. So
in some of these movies that are like this, where they're convincing someone they're crazy, you can see them manipulating, and you don't see that here. It's all from her point of view.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning, Robert returns. He finds a smashed door and puddles of blood at the locations of both shootings, but Peg doesn't remember anything special happening. Okay.
Yeah.
She denies having shot the gun when Robert finds it used. They argue. Robert searches the school and he flips a switch that makes the recorded sound of hundreds of students play over the speakers.
Confession time.
Robert explains that 9 years ago there was a huge fire. Carmichael was badly burned and several boys died. This isn't really a school anymore at all. Robert isn't really a teacher, he's Carmichael's caretaker. No one would let children attend this place. Carmichael just wanders around playing at being a teacher at this point, and Robert gets paid to play along. Now he thinks Carmichael must be the one who attacked Peggy. He's clearly a loony. We soon see that Robert and Mrs. Carmichael had been behind all this, having an affair, and making Peggy think she was crazy, and getting her to shoot and kill Carmichael. Now the question is, how do they get rid of Peggy? Where is the body? They need to get Peggy convicted of the murder. Their plan seems to be going along well, until they find out that things aren't always what they seem.
And I thought that's what made it so interesting, because it was kind of complicated and not what you expect.
It wasn't.
Has Joan Collins ever played a good person? A fundamentally through and through good person?
Star Trek.
Yep, you're right. Yep, okay.
That's the only one I can think of.
At least once, yeah.
Well, from early on, this is clearly one of those is she crazy or is it real kinds of stories that were so common in the 70s. Psychology was still seen as a mysterious, possibly supernatural science, and insanity and madness was always good for a story plot in the 70s. When everything is finally explained about 15 minutes before the end, it all makes sense, even if it is pretty contrived and complicated. Still, it does all make sense. The twists and turns of the plot aren't completely predictable, and it's pretty well acted overall.
Overall, I give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, you liked the previous movie. So, then we have The Omen from 2006.
Well, I didn't hate this, but I just thought it was totally unnecessary.
We did The Omen from the early 70s. We did Damien Omen 2. We did The Final Conflict, The Omen 3. Omen 4, The Awakening, which was awful. And then we've got this, which
Where
was
they come back to the beginning again and remake the first movie.
completely pointless. Yes.
It was just too similar.
Well, we both agreed a few weeks back when we did the first Omen movie that it still held up pretty well.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it clearly took place in the 70s. They didn't have cell phones and stuff, but it worked. It looked good. It's still creepy. It's still entertaining. It's just fine. This is the same film again.
Only it's like
Remember Psycho?
it's like when if you liked the first movie a lot but wish it wasn't quite as good, you should watch this.
They should try this again and not quite try
You
as
know
hard.
how they do remake. They do songs that way sometimes too, where you love the original song, but I wish this wasn't quite as good.
Yeah.
Listen to the remake.
Yeah, well, with that remake of Psycho a few years ago, that was a shot-for-shot remake, different actors in color, and completely pointless. This wasn't shot-for-shot the
No,
same.
it wasn't that exact.
But the story was the same. It's like they used the same script almost, and just made a few little changes.
and so therefore there were no surprises.
None.
Yeah.
Directed by John Moore, written by David Seltzer, stars Liv Schreiber, Julia Stiles, Seamus Davy Fitzpatrick. Hour and 50 minutes, which is almost 2 hours too long. If you haven't seen this, and you probably haven't, there is a link in the show notes to pick up a copy.
Some people have seen it.
It wasn't a big hit.
No.
They never remade the second one.
It wasn't huge, yeah.
Yeah, I think their whole plan here kind of failed on them.
I think they were planning on redoing all
Rebooting
three
the
of them, but
series, yeah.
this did not succeed well enough to,
It
as
wasn't
of yet,
bad.
yeah.
There was nothing really bad here.
just not necessary.
Yeah.
No.
All right. Well, we start out at the Vatican Observatory because the Vatican would have one of those.
It does.
I know they've got everything.
You
there.
keep scoffing at that every time the Vatican Observatory is mentioned in a movie. They really do.
The Vatican is like as big as our backyard, and it's a country in itself, and they've got all this stuff. And
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Well, they spot three commons. The prophecies are coming true, and Armageddon is coming soon. Meanwhile, Robert Thorne rushes to the hospital where his wife Catherine has just lost her baby.
She doesn't know that though.
They haven't told her. She might not be able to have another. The priest there knows of a baby where the mother died, and switching the two would be, it's such a little thing.
Such a little white lie. So
Yeah,
harmless.
we won't tell.
Yeah, we won't tell anybody.
Time passes, and Robert becomes the assistant to the ambassador to Great Britain. We start seeing various people on the street in what looks to be a setup for a Final Destination film as the ambassador waits in his car. Oh, boom! Robert is now the full ambassador.
Very Final Destination.
Yo, very, yeah.
Yeah, it was.
2 years pass. They throw a huge birthday party for Damien, and the nanny sees a big black dog staring at her. But this time, it's a German Shepherd instead of a Rottweiler. They did change
There
it.
were some bold changes made in this movie.
The nanny then hangs herself from the top of the house as all the children and photographers look on. And if it seems like we're going through this a little bit fast, it's because we just told you this story a month ago. Listen to the other podcast for the original Omen. It's the same.
Yeah.
When Robert gets back to the office, a priest, Father Brennan, wants to see him. "He'll kill again," says the priest. "I was there at the hospital the night your son was born." Jennings, the photographer, takes pictures of the priest on the way out. Mrs. Baylock shows up, and she wants to be the new nanny. Jennings develops his film, and he finds a strange line going into the priest on the prints. I did not cut and paste this description from the other movie, but I could have.
And I thought this nanny was a lot less sinister than the one in the original. This Mrs. Baylock.
Baylock, okay.
Yeah, I thought she was not as sinister, not as creepy, in my opinion.
All right.
No.
Well, the family gets in the car to go to church, and Damien gets crazy and scratches up Catherine. Robert mentions that Damien has never been sick a day in his life, which Catherine thinks is strange all by itself. Robert goes to tuck in Damien, and Mrs. Baylock explains that the dog in Damien's room is a new guard dog, but Robert says to get rid of it. In this scene, the dog is a Rottweiler. At the zoo, Damien spooks the monkeys, which convinces Catherine that she needs to see a psychiatrist. Father Brennan tells Robert to meet him tomorrow as Catherine is in grave danger. Jennings once again snaps shots of the priest. They meet and Brennan recites Revelation to him and explains things. Robert needs to see the man
Bugenhagen.
in the town of Megiddo to learn more. Oh, and hey, Catherine is pregnant. Damien will kill the baby before it's born. And Thorne warns Brennan to stay away from his family. As he leaves the meeting, Brennan is impaled by a lightning rod that falls from the church roof. When Robert gets home, Catherine tells him, "Hey, I'm pregnant."
Just like the priest said.
But she wants an abortion. The psychologist tells Robert that they need an abortion, but Robert wants the baby. Why would your psychologist recommend an abortion?
That's
not really
doesn't seem
his
like that's how that
area.
would work.
Yeah, well, there's a reason for it, but in the story, but it just seems like that would be setting off some alarms.
It seems like it.
Meanwhile, Damien rides his scooter through the house. Not a tricycle, it's a scooter. See that wacky change-up.
They made changes.
While Catherine's up on a step stool watering plants. He, of course, knocks her over the railing and she loses the baby. Robert visits her in the hospital and she whispers, "Don't let him kill me."
That's the nanny's job.
Yeah. Jennings calls and shows photos of the dead nanny and the dead priest. These shots show how they were killed before it happened. Even on the digital camera it shows up. See, now they got digital cameras.
Ooh, they've updated.
Yeah, updated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember any cell phone use or any technology other than this digital camera mentioned, so the update didn't change much.
Yeah.
Okay, well, they go over to the dead priest's home and find all his documentation, and he has a serious crazy wall. Jennings took a picture of himself, and he's got the death mark as well. They go to the orphanage where Robert got Damien, but it is burned down. The nun there tells him to find Father Spoleto in the monastery in Subiaco. Spoleto is a burned-up wreck of a man who sends him to an old cemetery up north from Rome. They go to the cemetery and look at the graves. Damien's mother was a jackal, and in the child's grave they find Robert's actual son with his brains bashed out.
Well, a hole crushed in the skull.
Well, whatever. Yeah,
They
clearly
killed-
a murder.
They killed the baby. Yeah.
And you'd think
they
if you were
killed his real baby.
if you were going to murder a baby, though, wouldn't there be easier ways than cracking a big hole in his skull?
Yes, but this way lets us know right there.
After he's
years later-
decomposed
years
in a
later.
skeleton, you can see what happened.
Because otherwise we
Yeah.
wouldn't know that, and this way makes it clear for the movie.
Yeah.
Benefit.
Okay.
It's a movie benefit death.
Sure is. Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense, yeah.
Yeah.
The film finally resorts to a jump scare when dogs pounce on the men out of nowhere and they're forced to flee the cemetery.
Hounds from Hell.
It finally resorts to a jump scare. We have reached that level of desperation in the plot. First one didn't have a jump scare. I don't remember. I don't think it did.
Not that I recall.
Yeah, these dogs, because I jumped for sure with these things. It's super loud.
Suddenly, yeah.
Meanwhile, back in London, Nanny Baylock visits at the hospital and she injects an air bubble into Catherine's IV drip, killing her. Not nearly as dramatic as pushing her out the window would have been.
And not nearly as certain either. That's kind of a movie trope.
Yeah, it is.
That gets used a lot, and it's not as fatal as movies lead you to believe.
How do you know this?
Because I was a student nurse.
Oh, they teach you all the good things, huh?
Well, I remember that being mentioned. I mean, it can mess you up and can cause strokes and organ damage, and it can cause harm or even death. But it's by no means in the movies they inject an air bubble, boom, they die.
Mm-hmm. Every
And
time.
it doesn't. It's not that certain. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when Robert finds out about it, he decides it's time to kill Damien. But how? They go to Megiddo, and who do they find?
Bugenhagen.
Bugenhagen gives them 7 daggers and tells them to look for 666 under his hair.
He's got the mark.
They argue about actually going through with it as Robert still has doubts. Jennings asks, "What if I'm next?" Unsurprisingly, Jennings is next, graphically beheaded.
Another Final Destination
Oh,
style.
very
death.
much. The first one was kind of Final Destination.
Yeah, yeah, it was.
But this one, whoa.
Yeah,
Rube Goldberg would
really.
be proud.
Uh-huh. The chain of events that makes that happen.
Yeah. Robert is now completely convinced. Robert flies home and plans to take Damien with him. Robert traps the evil dog in the basement, and then he grabs the scissors and starts digging around in the sleeping Damien's hair. He finds the 666 under the hairline just as Baylock attacks. He throws Damien in the car and drives right over Baylock. Thump. The cops see him driving unsafely and start to pursue him. Robert drags Damien into the church and gets ready to stab him with the daggers, and the police come in and shoot him before he can finish the ritual. Alright, well, this is almost a scene-by-scene remake. The casting is interesting. Liev Schreiber usually plays a creep or a villain, so seeing him as the good guy hero was a little strange here. I can't think of anything where he's been the good guy that I've seen.
There must be something. Yeah. Okay.
I can't think of any.
I can't think of any, but there got to be some.
Well, his manner here is still pretty ominous and intimidating, like he's about to pop out his claws and roar at any moment. Who was that? Wolverine's brother, cousin? What? Sabretooth.
Sabretooth, yes.
Yeah, like he was when he was Sabretooth. Mm-hmm. He's still got that kind of demeanor about him.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
The cinematography is a toss-up. It all looks colorful and dangerous, but there was a lot to be said for the grainy, washed-out dimness of the 70s version.
Mm-hmm.
It just sort of looks dull and creepy, and everything is very morbid in the old version. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be, maybe it's age, but it looks good. It's appropriate. The story in the old one holds up, obviously, since this was exactly the same story, but happening in the 70s made it feel a little more real for some reason. Other than the reframed shots and upgraded visuals, this film offers, quite honestly, nothing new. It's practically word for word the same script in the vast majority of scenes. The death of the first ambassador is the only really new scene in the first half of the film. Catherine's death is also different from the first film, but not as good in my opinion.
Yeah, same
She just
here.
lays there and dies.
Yeah.
Some differences are just there so you can't say it's exactly the same. Jennings was decapitated with a swinging metal sign instead of a sheet of glass. That really doesn't change anything. We watched it for the sake of completeness, but there's absolutely no reason you should watch it.
Watch the original and be happy.
Yeah, watch the original twice.
There you go.
If you want to see it again, watch the good one again. Alright, so now for something completely different.
The Belko Experiment, a 2016 movie.
This is one I had not heard anything about until just recently. Never heard anything about this when it came out.
No, not at all.
Directed by Greg McLean, written by James Gunn, stars John Gallagher Jr., Tony Goldwyn, Adria Arjona, and there's a link to Amazon in the show notes. Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
I did too.
Uh-huh. Very cool. I wouldn't mind seeing it again.
And we probably will someday. I'm surprised they haven't made a second one.
They should. They could.
Have they? It's been 2016.
They could. I don't think they have. But they could.
Yeah. Well, we start out in Bogota, Colombia. Well, is there a movie that springs to mind that you would immediately compare this to? Sprung that on you too fast, didn't I?
No, nothing's coming to mind.
Battle Royale.
Oh, Battle Royale, right.
Yes. Yeah. If you want to see Battle Royale done in English, this would be the one. It's kind of the same thing, only they're not children in school.
Kinda. There's that similarity of, battling it out until there's only,
One or two left.
Yeah.
We'll compare
Spoilers.
We'll compare them. Yeah, oh, yeah. We'll compare them when we get to the end.
This one's got quite a high body count.
Oh, yeah.
Juicy, wet body count.
We see the Belco Industries building, and it's a very high-security place with dogs sniffing at cars on the way in. Today, for some reason, they only let some of the employees in, and others get sent home.
The locals are all getting sent home. They piece it together.
They have a lot of international employees.
And only the international employees are coming in today.
Yeah, the Americans,
the native
the Brits,
Colombians are
and-
being sent away.
Yeah. A Spanish version of the song I Will Survive plays as the credits roll, and we see people doing things in the office. It all looks very mundane and normal. We see a control room with a bunch of little red lights and TV monitors, and we're told that employees are all injected with a tracer, supposedly to prevent kidnappings. If I wanted to move to Colombia, I might think about that. You do hear about those stories.
You do, yeah.
We spend a lot of time meeting and seeing the various characters, but all the local employees got sent home. Only the international people are here in the building today.
And they're mostly Americans, but not entirely.
Yeah. The loudspeakers announce that there are 80 people in the building, but in 8 hours, most of them will be dead. The man says that if there aren't 2 dead bodies in the building in 30 minutes, there will be consequences. Metal shutters close off the entire building, and no one is leaving. The shielding also cuts off all the cell phone reception. Barry, the chief operating officer, comes in and thinks this is all some kind of prank. The maintenance guys try to cut through the armored building, but they can't even scratch it.
Super duper metal.
Yeah, which I'm finding suspicious because there's no supernatural anything here. They can cut through most metals. Mike, the systems guy, thinks this is not a prank. The stoner guy thinks it's a psychological test. Until the new girl's head explodes. What?
What? It's real.
Random people all over the building start exploding. It's the implants. Mike tries to cut out his implant, but the loudspeaker threatens to detonate him immediately if he doesn't stop. Then they find cameras everywhere. So they're told the rules. The 76 people alive in the building are not to dismantle any cameras or try to extract the trackers, or else. They're given 2 hours to kill 30 people. If not, they'll kill 60 on their own. The panic begins and the deaths start soon thereafter. The maintenance men are the first to go. Mike says this isn't going to stop after killing 30 people. They won't allow witnesses to live. Well, the top bosses blowtorch open the armory.
Because there's an armory.
Why is there an armory?
For this purpose.
Yeah, it really is. They say it's for safety, but Mike thinks they just want the guns. Evan, the only security guard, makes them stop, but enemies are made in the process. Mike starts to think that the whole building may have been designed for this purpose alone.
Mm-hmm.
He
Sure
thinks
looks
it's
that
a
way.
government experiment, and their whole last year of work was just to set all this up. That's pretty elaborate.
Yeah, it is.
Barry knocks out Mike, kills Evan, and gets the keys to the armory. Barry realizes that there are too many guns in the armory. He also thinks this whole thing has been arranged. Everyone gathers in the lobby, and Barry and his gang start separating groups of people. As the Spanish version of California Dreaming plays, they try to execute 30 employees. Then the lights go out, and everyone
And
scatters.
What a chaotic scene
That is a really good scene.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The speakers announce that only 29 people have been killed, so they will now detonate 31 more as promised. Boom, boom, boom. That's what they do. The body count rises significantly. Now the rules change. The one who gets the highest kill count in 1 hour will be allowed to live. Time to pump those scores up, so things start getting personal. Barry gets stuck in the elevator, so his number isn't going up. Wendell, the lecherous perv, gets what's coming to him. Barry has an unfortunate ending, and Mike ends up winning the game.
Spoilers.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
He ends up talking to The Voice, who explains that it was actually an experiment. He's gathering data. When Mike sees that after his experience, given the opportunity, he has no problem killing.
Just when you think it's done, it's not done.
It's not. Okay, so these Battle Royale type movies always seem to have a Mike type character who is too heroic to simply murder everyone. This moral character usually either survives or makes it to the very end. I want to see one of these films where everyone legitimately tries to kill each other. Yeah, I mean, Mike wins, and he didn't even shoot anybody till the very end.
Mm-hmm.
He shot the perpetrators. He didn't shoot
'cause-
anybody in the game.
Because he's the good guy.
Yeah, there's always that one. The good guys are going to be the first ones to get shot in real life. I'm not going to shoot. Boom.
Yeah.
Well, we also see in the very final scene that this is only the most recent iteration of the experiment, and there are a dozen more buildings around the world. I am eagerly waiting for the inevitable sequels.
They could. They so could.
Oh, they totally could. So what would you rather watch? This or Battle Royale? Or is there another one similar to that you can think of?
Hunger Games. It's along those lines, too.
Sorta, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the game, at least in the first Hunger Games movie, the game is the main thing.
Yes, yes. But yeah, I think the Belko Experiment is my favorite of these
So far, yeah.
so far that I've seen, yeah.
I liked Battle Royale, but the subtitles and the fact that they were all just kids, and honestly, it was kind of hard to tell some of the kids apart in the dark. Yeah, I think Belko wins. Belko is better one.
Yeah, the way and boy, are we going to sound racist saying this, but Battle Royale, they were in the same demographic. The majority of the cast, they were kind of
Well,
androgynous,
that's the problem with
kind of all
Japanese
the same
school
age.
kids. They all wear the same uniform.
Yeah,
They all have very
identically
similar
dressed.
haircuts.
Yeah, because they were uniforms, and it was hard to tell one character from another sometimes.
Yeah,
with
it was.
frenzied scenes and kind of dark, and yeah.
At least with this one, you know who. There's enough big name characters and enough going on between the others. You can tell who's who very easily here.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's our show. Thanks for joining us. Stop in during the week at the website. We'd love to hear you from Twitter. We are at Horror Bulletin on Twitter. We'd love to hear from you there. Or comment on the podcast or contact us in the usual ways. Or check out our books at horrorguys.com/books. So, next week.
Next week is Fly Week. Fly Week at the Horror Guys. There was The Fly, and the Return of the Fly, and the Curse of the Fly, and then the remake of the Fly, and then a sequel to the remake.
Yeah, gonna watch them
A
all.
lot of flying.
It's 5 different Fly. The original The Fly from 1958. The next year's sequel, The Return of the Fly from 59. Black and white, black and white. No, the first one was color, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Yes,
The first one was color. The other two weren't. Mm-hmm. And then the third one, The Curse of the Fly from 65. And that wasn't a fly for the 50s and 60s.
And ironically, we'll talk about that more, but it was the same technology, but the 1965 one didn't actually have flies.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a sort of a in-name only
It was the transporter technology being used by more family members.
Yeah, it wasn't about a fly.
But no flies.
And then in 1986, Jeff Goldblum, he runs into a real fly in The Fly. And then a couple years later, there's a sequel, The Fly 2 from 89. So watch all 5 Fly movies, turn in next week, and we will bzzz you next week.
See ya.
See ya.